An interesting question that comes up is, how do you identify the leaders, right? So you're observing, you enter a group, you start chatting with people. How do you identify the leaders? There's certain cues that you can pay attention to. First of all, there's body language and taking up space. Now, each of these points, I touched on in a previous presentation. I don't think you were here for it, actually, this particular point. It was the conversation one, but I touched on how to identify the leader, body language wise and nonverbal wise. But these are not 100%. It's not like written in stone. What you're really looking for is clusters of these behavior patterns to kind of better identify the leaders. So body language and taking up space. Who's taking up more space as opposed to taking up less space, making themselves smaller, right? That's probably an indication of a leader in that particular group. Who has more relaxed movements versus stiff movements? Who seems just a little bit more relaxed, coloring outside the lines, so to speak, as opposed to stiff, which is what followers will typically have, right? Followers are kind of playing by the rules, so to speak. They don't want to step on anybody's toes because that's their role as a subordinate or as a follower in that particular group context. Who does most of the talking? Now this one can be deceptive sometimes, because sometimes a leader, could be an executive, could be a manager, will strategically make the choice to do less talking. And they'll point to their assistant or something, hey, you do most of the talking, I want to observe this guy and see how does he react to pressure and so on, from like a third party perspective. So barring that, typically speaking, in most group dynamics, the leader or the more influential, more powerful person will be doing most of the talking. They're kind of dominating the conversation. Or at the very least, dominating the conversation at certain key points, at certain key inflection points where there's a critical decision to be made, or there's a critical insight, or a mistake that was made by one of the followers, by someone else in the group, then the leader will step in and correct that person, let's say, right? And again, the leader feels relaxed and comfortable doing that because they're the boss, right? They're the powerful person. Another indication is, who is everybody else kind of facing or checking in with? So you'll see this sometimes at a restaurant. You see a group of people, say 3, 4, 5 people. The waitress comes up and says, are you guys ready to order? And there's a very split second there, a very quick moment where everybody kind of looks up and looks over at the leader of that group, right? It's kind of like the organizer of the evening, the person who kind of called everybody together, the person who selected the restaurant, whatever, right? We've all kind of been in this situation. So everybody will kind of look up and say, essentially saying, is it okay? Should we order now? Right? So they're looking for their cues. They're seeing, they're checking in with that individual. Another one is speaking louder than other people, right? So going back to volume, again, there's like a certain baseline level of volume in the group. The leader is probably a notch or two above that. A couple other indications: a leader will be freer with their words, and they'll be more candid as they're speaking, and they might even use more curse words also than the followers, right? Assuming it's a good group, like kind of well organized. Now sometimes you'll have the reverse, where the followers and the subordinates are more candid and cursing, and the leader is more formal and stiff. And what does that mean? That means that you have a group that has no discipline, right? The leader doesn't really have a lot of control over those people because they are kind of running around. It's like a teacher that's playing by the rules and the kids are just having their fun, right, in the classroom. It's the same idea. So typically in a well-run organization, the leader has the power to color outside the lines and to make and break the rules, so to speak, whereas the followers will be on their best behavior.